Donald J. Trump was born on June 14, 1946 in Queens. He was the middle child of Fred and Mary Ann McLeod Trump. Fred's parents, Frederick and Elizabeth, were two German immigrants. They departed Germany because Frederick wanted to avoid compulsory military service. Frederick, who earned good money running a brothel in Alaska during the gold rush, moved to the US for a fresh start. Elizabeth Trump started a company and named it E. Trump and Son. And soon Fred, who was a hard worker just like his mom, took over the whole business. It was tough for him during the Great Depression, but he somehow thrived and managed to establish a successful real estate business. Fred and his wife raised their 5 children in a mansion in Queens. So Donald was already rich when he was born. As Donald grew up, Fred taught his children, especially Donald, to always work hard. Amongst his friends, Donald was always considered the rich kid, but his father made sure not to bring him up soft. Alright, young man, from now on, you have to work 20 hours a week delivering newspapers, or else I'll take your Corvette. So he made him do newspaper delivery. His father always emphasized the importance of hard work and wanted Donald to be a winner when he grew up. But it wasn't as easy as that. When he was 13, Donald was a bully in school. He got into a lot of fights and on one occasion even punched his music teacher in the face. Fred noticed his son's unruly behavior and sent his punk ass to military boarding school upstate because he had yet to learn about discipline. In the military school, Donald really thrived. All the drills and intense physical exercises and also verbal and physical abuse made him resilient to almost everything. He was good at sports and was obsessed with baseball, football, and soccer. They gave him a lot of medals and he became somewhat disciplined, or rather was beaten into it. Also, he always went around and said this: "Hey, I'm gonna be famous someday." Okay. Good luck, I guess. Also, during the summers, he always went back to Queens to learn the real estate business from his father. After graduating from school, he didn't know what he wanted to do. He was considering going to film school in LA to become a director, but eventually he went to Fordham University for 2 years. Then, transferred to the University of Pennsylvania's business school, studied economics, and also dodged the Vietnam War draft because of Hillspurs. Sauce. After college, he officially went to work with his dad in the real estate business, building lower and middle class apartment buildings in Brooklyn and Queens. The first few years were tough for him, but after the 3 years of apprenticeship in the year 1971, Donald Trump took over the company from his father. The first thing he did was rebranding the business, which went like this. Trump really loved attention, and now that he was the head of the company, he did whatever he wanted to. He moved to Manhattan and often went to lots of elite nightclubs, and you'd think that he went there to get laid. Well, yeah, but he also tried his best to promote himself. Now remember, this all happened in the 70s, when the Civil Rights Act had just been passed, making it illegal for people to discriminate based on race. So the Department of Justice would send people of color who were agents to see if landlords were discriminating based on race. One day, one of the agents walked into one of Trump's apartment complexes to rent an apartment. Hey! So I wanted to rent an apartment. There's no apartment for rent currently. But the sign says that you have 45 apartments for rent. That shouldn't be here. Hey, I want an apartment. Sure, buddy. Here you go. We'll discuss the money later. Anything else? They sent a couple of agents and noticed that this was occurring in all of Trump's buildings. So the DOJ hit the Trump organization with a lawsuit. Although a lot of the managers in his residencies admitted that they were just following orders from the boss man himself, Donald never admitted this and got really mad. And guess what he did? He countersued the DOJ for $100 million and fought back. After years of pursuing the case, he finally struck up a deal with the DOJ that required him to make his buildings welcoming to all people, regardless of race. And FYI, he never admitted to any of his mistakes. This lawsuit opened Trump's eyes. It left a bitter taste in his mouth. So he decided to shift his focus from middle-class residencies to glamorous, fancy Manhattan apartments. But you have to know that Manhattan wasn't as cool as it is today, or even back in the 50s. In the 70s, it was a dump and a perfect place for Donald to dominate. Around this time, he found out about an undeveloped site on the west side of New York City. It was the Commodore Hotel and 2 abandoned rail yards. Donald wanted these so badly, but acquiring them wasn't an easy task. After pulling a lot of strings, he finally purchased the development right and turned the Commodore Hotel into the Grand Hyatt Hotel. But that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to be the best, the most recognized. So he promised to take the 2 rail yards and build 20,000 apartments on the site. The locals hated the idea. And also he ran into some problems with the New York City mayor and the planning commission. Eventually, the development plan didn't work out. Or did it? One thing you should know about Trump is that he never gives up on the things he truly wants and fights until there's absolutely no option but to give up. So keep that in mind about this project. After failing in this project, Trump was very frustrated, but he didn't let that affect his business perspective. Around this time, he met Ivana Zelnichkova, a Czech model, and married her in 1977. 2 years later, he purchased a site on Fifth Avenue and started a big project. He wanted to turn his childhood dream into reality. Although the project faced many challenges, he finally made it, the famous Trump Tower. The 80s was the best decade for Trump. He gained recognition among people, did a lot of interviews, and appeared on some famous talk shows. Back then, a lot of people loved the man. I mean, he was rich, had a hot European wife, and was renewing New York City, constructing huge buildings with his name on them. If you don't call that the American dream, well, no problem. Also, he's opened his own casino in Atlantic City, drawing even more attention to himself. In 1985, Trump again decided to chase the West Side Rail Yard project. Why, you ask? 2 reasons. Because the guy who was in charge of financing the project didn't even have enough money. Also, one other significant obstacle: Trump himself. Trump being Trump, schemed behind the scenes and made sure the guy couldn't start the project. He did this through campaigns and his political influence for over 10 years. Why, you ask? Because, as I told you before, he doesn't want to lose. And he wanted the redevelopment deal so bad, he believed he was the only one who was supposed to do it. So after this guy pulled out, Trump again bought the development rights and got a second chance. He had big plans and wanted to call the project the Television City. But the mayor Ed Koch, whom Trump had a lot of problems with because of the tower taxes, was again in the way. After a lot of setbacks and speculations, Trump finally concluded that the Television City project was a dead end for him. So he scaled down the project and named it Riverside South, and wanted to focus on building tall, luxury apartments and also a big headquarters for NBC. After this setback, he bought a fleet of planes and launched his own airline, naming it the Trump Shuttle. Because, of course, who doesn't want his name on a freaking plane? Trump also expanded his casinos and released a book called The Art of the Deal. And you have to note that even back in the 80s, when he was just a businessman, he showed interest in politics and constantly talked about how other countries are taking advantage of the US. And he always said that if he ran for president, he'd win. The 90s wasn't a great decade for Trump. He got into a lot of debt, and at one point he was $3 billion in debt. But he tried his best to never show it. However, he couldn't keep it a secret for long. He sold his airline, his yacht, part of the Grand Hyatt, and also saw his 3 casinos go bankrupt. On top of that, because he was having an affair with actress Marlo Maples, his wife filed for divorce. And he finally admitted defeat on the West Side Rail Yard project, even though it had already been scaled down. But hey, at least he cameoed in Home Alone 2. At this point, everyone thought he was done for and believed Donald Trump would be forgotten in upcoming years. But to everyone's surprise, he had a huge comeback. By selling the West Side Rail Yard development rights, he made good money. He also sold shares of Trump Plaza Casino in the New York Stock Exchange, which recovered him from bankruptcy. In 1996, he bought Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, and Miss Universe beauty pageants and turned these into big, glamorous shows with lots of publicity, because, of course. But regarding these beauty pageants, he did a lot of questionable things. Look that up if you want to. He also released another book, letting everyone know that he was back. In 1999, Donald's father died and he divorced his second wife. However, he attended the funeral with his new girl, Melania Naus, a Slovenian model he had been dating for over a year. Around this time, he was wondering whether he should run for president or not. He actually did run, but suddenly dropped out because he wasn't 100% sure he could win. In 2004, Donald Trump hosted a reality TV show named The Apprentice. At first, he was supposed to be only one of the hosts of the show, but the show became a nationwide hit, so they decided to keep Trump for all seasons. Over the course of 14 seasons, Trump made $500 million from this show. In 2009, Trump decided to release his new book, Think Like a Champion. It was around this time that the Tea Party movement started to gain traction, which was made up of conservative Americans who were fed up with government policies. Now, how does this connect to Donald Trump? Well, they were all about challenging the political establishment, which fit perfectly with Trump's outsider image. And a lot of the people who supported the Tea Party also became Trump supporters because they liked his bold anti-establishment style and how he just said things. In his speech at CPAC, he called Republicans losers and claimed that Obama came out of nowhere. He also said that Obama wasn't born in the US, which pissed off a lot of people, including Obama. But of course, he roasted him later. And Trump was not happy with how he was treated. But again, he decided to pull out of the 2012 elections because he felt it wasn't yet the time and that he didn't get enough support. In 2015, in his tower, he officially announced that he was running for president because he thought the country was losing prestige and power. Since he was already very good at comebacks, he thought he'd make a great comeback for America. By now, Trump was a great public speaker and almost a comedian. He gained a lot of attention, as always. And honestly, I enjoyed watching his debates back then, even though I didn't understand jack squat. In hindsight, they were wild though. He promised the famous Mexico Wall and throwing out illegal immigrants. And although no one expected it, he eventually won the election. During his presidency, he signed a tax cut reform, somehow boosted the economy. Of course, this was before COVID. He struck up the Abraham Accords and appointed 3 conservative Supreme Court judges. On the bad side, the wall didn't work out. The COVID didn't just disappear like a miracle. And also, many criticized him for his immigration policies, trade wars, Paris Climate Agreement, insane tweets, and overall how he handled COVID-19, among a lot of other things. In 2019, Trump got impeached for calling Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden's son. And in 2020, Trump ran for re-election against the Democrat Sleepy Joe. In his campaign, he talked about fixing the economy, law and order, and problems caused by the COVID-19. But the pandemic and the protests over racial injustice became big problems for him. So he lost the election, but he believed that the election was stolen from him. So on January 2021, he held a rally in Washington, D.C. and told his supporters to fight like hell. A swarm of his supporters stormed the Capitol and rioted like crazy. And still to this day, it's really hard for me to believe that these pictures are for real. This action earned Trump his second impeachment, but it was acquitted in the Senate. Not believing in the fairness of 2020 election, he later announced he would run for president in 2024. 9 months later, he got arrested in Georgia because he was accused of trying to change the results of the 2020 election. When he was booked at the jail, they took this famous mugshot. And the rest is history. You know about the shooting? Boy, was he lucky on that one. The presidential debates were also crazy, as always. In the first one, Trump bullied Biden, and in the second one, he talked about how people in Ohio eat cats and dogs. And eventually, he won. Boy, what a crazy ride. Take care.